Hi there and welcome back to Japan, where once again I will be talking to my dear friend and, dare I say, mentor, Steve Gilmore. Hi, how you doing?
All right, mate.
So, in the previous conversation we had, we pretty much talked through most of your career up to the current moment. Now, there's a couple of things that we're doing here today. We're going to pick up on that conversation a little bit later, but first of all, and this is something that's been nicely hyped on our Discord, I gave you 5 contemporary Japanese songs from artists who we cover on this channel. And I asked you to basically give your opinions and thoughts on them. Now, what I'm going to do is, while we discuss them, I'm going to bring up the names of these songs and artists on the screen. And then we'll discuss, after you've given me your thoughts on all of them, I'll tell you a little bit about the artists and we'll discuss them a bit more. But first of all, I wanted to get your thoughts. So names will come up on the screen for everyone at home to see. Not yourself, though. So, if you're ready, let's start with song number 1.
Okay, so number 1, who was that?
Well, I'm going to get you to tell me what you think first of all, and then I'll tell you the details afterwards.
You're such a bastard.
You damn right I am.
First of all, one of the things that strikes me with most of these tracks, in fact, probably all of them, is the incredible energy that they got going on. Obviously, I don't understand a word that's going on,
No.
but I really appreciate the energy. And like in all circumstances, I'm also listening to what the actual sounds like.
Yeah.
And again, there's a kind of punky thread to all of these tracks.
That's quite true, actually, I think. Yeah.
There's not a lot of light and shade there, you know. It's kind of straight ahead, you know, which is not a bad thing because you get tremendous energy out of that. And one of the things that I've always liked about your music is it has very, very similar sound, you know.
I don't tend to know how to be calm very well. I think that's true. I have a lack of ability to be quiet.
That's true. And this track made me think instantly, well, of course, Howard, like this. It's exactly what you would like. And what I came to was that it actually made me want to watch the video. Because that will give you extra clues, you know. Obviously, I have a problem because I don't understand the language. But at the same time, when I see these things in videos, there's often, you know, visual clues as to what's going on, you know.
Well, I will tell you that all 5 of these songs do have videos, and I'll make sure that you have access to them afterwards just for your own pleasure.
Okay. So this first one, just, you know, to me, it just made sense that you would like it. And one of the things that really impressed me is that there's so many changes.
Yes, that is true, actually. It's a very quick changing song.
It's like, what the fuck, you know? And that's what kept me interested. You know, because I can't say that, you know, I'd actually go out and track this stuff down,
no.
which obviously you've done. And I think that to really get a grip on it, you would have to have a basic understanding of the Asian rock pop scene, you know.
I think that's true, and that's often the very inaccessible part of it, is that people struggle to get into this particular music scene because it's not, you know, outside of its home country. It's not particularly well, you know, well explained, well described, you know, easily accessible.
Well, I think to a lot of Western ears, that kind of frenetic vocalizing is difficult, you know.
That's true as well. There tends to be a lot more of that solo vocal.
It's hard to relate, you know. Because all the time you're thinking, what are they screaming about? What are they screaming about?
So,
but that's also a feature of Asian music. It's a very different beast to Western music, and they have certain traits that many in the West find grating.
It's wildly more kinetic, I've noticed. Like the attention to detail and the constant need to keep the song sounding fresh at all points. I mean, you'll never get two verses that sound the same.
That's right. And that's certainly true of this particular track.
Yes.
I mean, so much inventiveness, it's untrue.
So this one to you came across as kind of inventive, quickly changing, adaptable, frenetic as well. Overall, the interesting thing I'd say, because I agree very much about the style of writing, what would you say about the overall tone of the song? I mean, did you feel that it had a particular identity, or did it seem a little bit to lack an identity when it came to like the sound?
But that's one of the main reasons why I want to watch the video. Because they're going to put more into a video, obviously, than you're going to get from a track in a language that you don't understand.
I must admit, I watched the video to this song, and I don't want to give too much away because, like I say, I'll give you a link to it as well. I think the video told me more about the way that the energy of the song was supposed to be perceived than anything about what the content of the song was. I gained nothing content-wise from seeing the video, but I certainly gathered that the energy was exactly as it was intended to be heard. What you heard was exactly what they wanted you to hear.
Yes.
That came across in the video very much. So I think there's a sense of purpose that maybe the slightly light and pop rocky sound of the song perhaps betrays.
Don't get that, but again, it's not something that I could take apart the same way that I could take apart Western music.
Yeah, I understand that the approach is because it goes into like a reggae bit and then it's like a ska bit and then it's totally out of that and it's moved on to like pop punk before you know it.
Yeah. Which is, that's also very true of bands in the West. They do tend to kind of meld from one thing to another, which is no bad thing. But again, when you're listening to something in a language that you don't understand, it's often difficult to make sense of what's actually going on.
Well, in the last part of our interview, we talked a bit about lyrics, so I know that's a big part of this. But yeah, shall we move on to song number 2?
Only tell me who they are.
Huh?
Who's this first band? Who were they?
Should we do it? Because there's some questions I want to ask you at the end. So I'll tell you what, we'll go through this one by one, and then I'll tell you after we've done all 5. I'm going to make you wait. I'm sorry.
You are such a bitch. Okay, go on then.
All right, song number 2. What did you think?
The first time I heard it, I was like, oh my God. I can't keep up with this, truly frenetic. And the thing that it reminded me of most was a band in the punk era called X-Ray Specs.
Ah, okay, yes, I know this band, yeah. I've heard this band.
And that was the influence that kind of got me, because I recognized the sound. It was kind of direct steel.
Yeah.
And out of all of this is the most punky of all of these tracks.
Yeah, I think that's
fair. Again, I'm not hearing things like "Oh bondage up yours," because I don't understand what's going on. And obviously, again, watching a video would help you to understand through visual clues what was going on. And the thing that really blew me away is, Jesus Christ, this thing is quick.
Yeah. It's like a minute and a half, and it goes through so much in a minute and a half.
Yeah. And it goes like its ass is on fire, you know. I don't know how fast, how many beats per minute it's clocking up, but it's ferocious.
It really is.
Absolutely ferocious. So, you know, when I listen to it, and every time I listen to it, I think, you know, I could never dance to something like this. Even if I was younger, I could never dance to anything like this. It's just absolutely frenetic.
You have to just kind of freak out in the most like insane, energetic way, I imagine.
Yeah, yeah.
Kool-Aid man your way through a wall.
So yeah, I did like that one. Yeah.
Oh, quite well.
Even then, you know, I have to say that it's not something that I would search out. I might find it on, you know, YouTube crawl, and think at the time, oh yeah, that's pretty good, and then move on.
Yeah.
But hearing it in audio, first of all, was, you know, it was impressive.
So let's move. Now, this is a kind of an interesting one. Let's move on to song number 3. What did you get from this one? Because this is an interest. This is one that divides people.
This was fucking brilliant. Absolutely top class production. You know, you couldn't fault the production on it. And I got the feeling that this is probably very popular.
I think it probably is actually. I think this is quite. I don't think it's like sort of number 1 hit material, but it certainly was quite popular, certainly by the standards of the artist who produced it.
Yeah, probably my favourite track, you know, so far, because of its quality. The love and devotion that went into this just shines out, you know.
Yeah.
A really good track. I mean, so much work went into it. It's just frightening.
I mean, what? Because obviously you mentioned about the production, which I definitely agree. I mean, the sound is really all there. Were there any other things that really stuck out to you about this? Any other things that you'd perhaps point out, maybe musically about it as well?
No, not really, because it's a kind of musical style that I find very difficult to get close to. Yes, I like its overall feel, but again, if I don't understand half the song, then, you know, it's kind of difficult, you know.
Hard to dissect.
And I can only go by what I hear.
Yeah.
The backing track is just superb, really good, you know. And again, once I see a video of it, it might become clearer to me.
I think you'll enjoy that video.
Well, if they put as much sweat and labour into a video as they did with this track, then yeah, I can see that happening.
I would say they put a mind-blowing level of charm. This is the thing that I really get from this song and from this band, is an incredible level of charm and personality. There's like a sense that they do shine through beyond perhaps even their musical ability, as having a sort of sense of, I don't know, there's a sense of fun to them or what they do that is quite noticeable. So I would say this is driven by a real energy that is kind of like a love for music. Yeah,
you can see that.
Yeah, I think very much so. Okay, so that's a good review. So positive reviews for song number 3. So here's the big interesting one, song number 4. Now this is a bit of a weird one. Like I said, it's the only one featuring traditional Japanese instruments as well.
And again, this kind of was the standout track for me because of its use of Asian instruments.
Yeah.
Even though it's in, you know, a Western setting, it fits. And it's difficult to do that. Having done, a lot of these tracks myself, it's very difficult to have the two kind of musical cultures blend together to make something that's different,
Yeah.
That was always my challenge making world music, because I wanted to do things that looked at the same instruments but in a different way,
I think that's one of the things we've most shared in common is the love for that particular approach towards traditional traditional musical instruments.
Yeah. And again, the production on this stands out because if these are real instruments and not samples, the quality is really good. Very interesting sonically.
Yeah, I think fantastic. Any particular notes on the song itself? Did the song sort of stand out to you, or was it more the sound that? Because I know you're as a producer, but at heart, it's the sort of sound of songs that you most notice, I think.
Well, yeah, because I was so blown away by the music. Again, because I don't understand language, the lyrical side of it is going to take second place. Because I don't have time to assimilate that at the same time as I'm, actually taking in the content of the music.
That sounds fair.
In every case, watching the video will help me to understand a lot more about my feelings when I was hearing the tracks.
Maybe after I've sent you the videos, if you want to give any sort of extra comments, we can do like a little bit of a we can do like a little epilogue. The epilogue's the one that goes at the end, isn't it? Yeah. We can do a little an extra note, an extra chapter on the end of this, just to see if you add any comments afterwards. But so before I tell you about these bands, let's move on to song number 5 and get your views on this one. Deep breath.
One of my particular production favourites, as indeed it is with you, is multi-layering.
Yeah.
Where you embellish a sound, you enhance a sound by mixing 3 or 4 different sounds together to make a fifth sound.
Yeah.
And this track really shows that particular discipline to great effect.
Yes, this is one that I probably should explain to a lot of people who maybe listen and watch the channel, and I will do in one of the features that I've got coming up, hopefully. But yeah, there is that's a technique as well that I think is most commonly associated with like sort of harder edge rock sounds, where you want to get like a more rounded sound out of a single instrument, and you make it sound like one instrument, but in actuality, that one instrument is the culmination of multiple recordings layered on top of each other.
Yeah. And in that respect, I mean, this has great production values, and the sound itself is hard, like hard.
Yeah.
And I have a particular fascination for hard sounds. I like hard sounds.
I know you do.
I've always been into rock, I like to have my ears sliced off. It's fun.
It is a real ear slicer of a song, isn't it, this one?
Okay. Yeah, it is.
All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you a few quick questions just to sort of sound for there's no trick to these questions. These are just to get a rough feel for how these came across. And then we're going to talk through the songs and I'll give you the information on them. So first of all, of these 5 songs, one of these songs, the band does not actually play their instruments. Any idea which one you think that might be?
So who does play the instruments? Session musician?
Yeah.
Or electronic musicians?
Yeah, this is, by the way, I'm going to ask you 4 questions. This is question 1 of 4, and it's that they have one of these songs, they have session musicians play their instruments. The band themselves don't actually play the instruments.
Track 3.
Take a guess at track 3. That's actually a really interesting guess. I'll tell you for why in a minute. All right, question number 2. So which of these bands do you think has probably got the most explosive breakout following? The one who is like the really like big deal at the moment?
That's a difficult one.
That's the really tricky one because you're not used to the Japanese. I will point out this is not in the Japanese market alone. This is a band who've actually broken out in the Western market as well.
Okay. In that case, I think I'll go for number 5.
Very, very interesting guess there, definitely. I can't tell you if you're right or wrong until afterwards. So this one's just a personal one. Which one would you say is most likely me? Which one do you think is the song that I am most biased towards on some kind of horrifying... Which one?
Number 1.
Number 1. I'm really liking these answers. And final question. Which is your personal favourite?
Oh, God.
That's a difficult one. That's a difficult
one. I think it's a combination of 3 and 4.
3 and 4.
But that's because of my own particular tastes.
All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk you through these songs, and then you'll probably guess the answers to the questions. But once I've talked you through the songs, I'll give you the answers afterwards, so we can have a little discussion. Now, band number 1 is a band called Scandal. Now, they are, and apologies, we have some really, really extremely hardcore Scandal fans following the channel. So I have to be careful about what I say here to make sure I get all the facts right.
Yeah, I do know about them. I've heard about them before.
I'm not overly surprised. I would imagine that you probably would have heard of them. I think there's 2 bands on this list who I think you would have heard of, and Scandal's probably one of them. They've been around for now best part 12 or 13 years. They got together as a group of, I think in high school they got together and started a band. They got signed and originally were playing songs that were written for them, but then took over and started writing for themselves. They are, completely self-sufficient musicians. They play all their own songs personally. I would say personally, if I was to give my own judgment of them, they are incredibly diverse in that they will play any sort of style of music. And yet I think that they always kind of come across as being them. They're very, they're very them. And that's quite nice. Their celebrity, their star, if you like, has kind of dwindled slowly over the years, but they've maintained a very strong following, as tends to be the case in Japan if you're a competent band with good songs.
13 years, nothing to sneeze at.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially considering they started as basically high school students, from what I gather. That means that they're still obviously very young, but they've kept basically child fame and managed to turn it into an actual legitimate career.
Yeah.
This is a relatively early song of theirs, from what I gather. It's kind of in their mid to early career, but I think you could find this kind of music throughout. Now,
So why do you think that Scandal fans are particularly rabid?
Oh, see, I like that. You turned that on me with a really good question. You've put me in the spotlight now. I think there's a couple of reasons. I mean, first of all is the fact that Scandal definitely were not the first to do anything necessarily, but I think that they probably are the first good example of a group who were both, they attractive, musically competent, just the complete package. Before them, you had groups like Puffy, who you might have heard of, who were massive. They were the first Japanese group to really break out into the West. But they were musically competent, but they didn't really play their own instruments because they were more about the singing. Scandal were the first group, in my opinion, and also you had some like groups like Aldius, who were like a more hard rock group, but they didn't get as popular because they didn't have the pop appeal. I just think Scandal were the first group to really bring it together in a way that, you could go, I respect these girls as musicians. They're good looking. They got good songs. They're kind of like, they're a complete package. And they've kept that going by delivering songs off the back of it. And by taking over their own songwriting duties, they've increased their respect quality as they got older. So I think that their older fans feel like they've been genuinely paid off by an artist who's really built a career, and their newer fans feel like they're walking into like a cornucopia of songs that have been laid down over a decade. So I think that's the reason. I think it's partly reputation, but partly just because they kind of earned it. They've stuck to it and they've earned it, which I think is great.
One of the signs that you're doing this right is this hardcore base of fans that stay with you no matter what no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's very true.
Again, to me, that's the hallmark of a successful group.
I think they'll be around for years. I don't think they'll go anywhere. I think they'll be around for years.
Probably not. In line with a lot of Western musicians, you think that they go away, but they're just in the background doing other things,
Yeah, and incidentally, I haven't heard them yet, but they've had a group of side projects they've made, including one where two of the members went and did like a rap duo. This is how much they enjoy just playing with music. They are, they're basically kids who grew up with music and became adults who do music. So I have enormous respect for them, but I'll get into more details about that later, because there's a couple of things I don't want to sandbag. I don't want to give away quite yet. So moving on to song number 2. Now, I will give away one of the answers to one of the questions. This is a group called BiSH. Now, BiSH, they don't play their own instruments because, in actuality, this is a girl band. This is a singing, dancing girl band.
Yes.
I have mind-blowing respect for these girls because, in actuality, what they do is that every song they do is wildly different. Like this one, like you say, is like an example of pretty much punk being done in the most punk way it could be imagined. And then they'll spit out like a beautiful ballad, which will be really emotional and actually very well done. And then they'll have like a hard rock song. And they're all over the place. And every single member seems to have like a extra superfluous talent. Like one of them's a bassist. One of them is a choreographer. They really do get involved in what they do. But their music is wild-ranging. And it's kind of a demonstration of something that I think exists in Japan, but not in any other country in the world, which is where you can produce girl bands who are not expected to produce pop singles, but are actually... what they want is you want to see a group of girls who are actually genuinely interesting. Although a couple of them are musically talented, none of them played any instruments in this song that I'm aware of. It was just literally a group of 6 girls screaming a punk track. And
but that's often the case with certainly with Japanese bands. A lot of them are basically singers.
Yeah, and most of them are trained in piano from a young age as well. So there's this kind of singer piano baseline quality to a lot of musicians.
So does that explain the really crap end of Japanese music?
So what did it say that again?
So does that explain the really crap end of Japanese music?
Well, Japanese music certainly has a crap end. Depends on what you mean.
Oh, does it ever? Yeah.
But what would you define as the crap end? Can you give me an example?
Well, there's in fact it's an all over Asia thing. There's this harking back to music from the 40s and 50s. That they don't quite get it. You know what I mean?
I kind of get it. Yeah.
The performance and style of the music is there.
Do you mean the twee thing? Do you mean the twee thing?
This whole kind of "will you please stop making me sick" routine, because that side of music, in common with what happens in the West just completely turns me off. I don't want sugar. I want spice.
Yeah. I think what you're referring to is what for anyone listening is probably thinking of things like AKB48 and these sort of like large girl groups who are designed to just sort of like be twee and cutesy and very fake.
Yeah. And it seems to me that there is a lot of that in Japan.
Well,
where, you know, it's kind of, I don't know, almost regimented, but not really. Not as much as other Asian countries.
I think that, I mean, yeah, not as much as others, but to a certain degree. I mean, Japan, I think, has the most extreme versions. Now, BiSH actually are part of a record label called, actually, I think it's an artist management group called WAC. And WAC basically has pretty much, I think, all girl groups, and all of the girl groups are designed to be the total antithesis of what you're describing. And I think that BiSH were I think they were the second one to come along, and they're fantastic in that they are pretty much always doing things to make themselves as completely unwholesome as is possible. And I would actually point out, this is another thing I wanted to mention, because you mentioned about this being quite a punky song and about the language. I'm not 100% sure what the lyrics of this song are, but they have got at least a couple of other songs that are incredibly lyrically what would by a Western audience would consider deeply offensive, in that they're just like heavily sexualized material in some of them, just for the sake of it. I mean, really just for the sake of being completely off the wall. So they're not afraid of doing things just to stir the pot, so to speak.
And again, you know, how do they look when they're performing this material?
They look like they're enjoying it. They look like they're having fun.
It's a big part of it, you know, especially with this track. When I hear something like that, my first thought is, I'd like to see this, you know. Well, in much the same way as I felt about punk when it first started to appear.
When I send you the video, I mean, I'll give you just for the sake of conversation, I'll tell you first of all, I mean, the video basically is them just running around Tokyo with hammers, and just dancing and screaming. And then the scream sound you hear at the end is the very last clip of the video, is them walking along a beach, but someone's deliberately set a trap door in the beach underneath one of them, and so one of them just falls through into the ground. So everything about it is very, very sort of punk. It's the antithesis of what you'd expect from a pop group. So I have incredible respect for this group in a very strange way, just because they are. You never know what you're going to get. Every time you hear a song by them, you never know what it's going to be. But the one thing you know is that they're going to give their 110% towards it. So, not a band, a girl group, but incredibly high on my respect level.
I'd certainly like to hear their take on more, you know, kind of Western things, like, you know, we were talking about the saccharine end of it.
I'll give you some links to that. They never get too twee, because I think there's always, I mean, they do some really sweet, beautiful songs. I mean, they actually have a song called "Life Is Beautiful," which actually is, it's really quite sweet, but it actually feels so infected with genuine emotion that it never feels twee, like it never feels like what you're describing. It actually genuinely feels quite emotionally deep. So I think they have a level of depth that they never, even in the punk, they never shake that level of depth. It's never lost. And thus they never quite achieve what I would regard as the Western style of, well, the popularized Western style of pop. They never sound commercial in a commercial way. So, yeah, absolutely brilliant. I will definitely link you to them, though.
But obviously this is also a localized parochial thing, right? In so far as if you're Japanese, you're gonna understand this a million times more than any other people, you know, because it's a reflection of the society that you live in. And the one thing that I do understand is that Westerners in general have no idea what it's like to live in a country like Japan.
That is so true that it's beyond belief. Yeah,
I've studied, Japan quite a lot. I'm kind of fascinated by it because it's such a different country to any other country on earth. And in fact, it has a lot of parallels with English. They're both island nations. They're both extremely peculiar in their habits. And they're driven people.
There's a lot of similarities. I mean, there's a lot of places where the similarities become opposites, but there are some core similarities that are very interesting.
Yeah.
I would say though that it's just to cover that point though. I mean, in regards to BiSH, this group, they haven't been a massive breakout success abroad, but they've had some gentle success slowly getting support abroad, and it is surprising how many people are turning to them because I think they just have an undeniably winning quality. They're once you see them, you can't turn your back on them because what they do is so wonderfully antithesis to the modern girl group, and at the same time is so winningly genuine that they do win you over. Anyway, let's move on to song number 3. Now, this is by a band called Siren. Imagine you probably haven't heard of them.
No, I don't think.
I personally, I got to admit, I am really biased towards this band. I love this band. I think they're fantastic. Now, this song Fujiyama Disco, as it's called, is probably the most popular one. But the thing which makes them really interesting to me is that they have a real wealth of musical talent available to them. They have the singer is also the guitarist, so they don't have a standalone lead guitarist, which I think works as well. They have rhythm guitarist, singer. They have a bassist, a drummer, and a keyboard player. And the result is that their songs tend to always have a slightly poppy inflection. But what they do is all of their songs are very accessible. I haven't heard a song by them that is not accessible. And yet, all of their songs are detailed, interesting, fun, clever. Yeah, I mean, just really, it comes across as something that anyone could get into and anyone could love. So I find them a very, very good band for that. I think the only reason they haven't broken outside of Japan is because they have especially with the lead singer's voice, they have a sound that's a little bit on the high pitch end. It's a little bit too squeaky and Japanese as Western people would unfortunately see it. But but there's nothing wrong with that style of singing. It's just looked down on in Western audiences. That sort of higher register singing is not seen favorably.
And yet we have some of the, certainly in rock, some of the highest vocals ever,
Don't make me do my AC/DC impression.
Well, yeah, exactly. When you talk about, some of the real screamers in the hard rock field. For me, I got to say, as soon as they get into that, I'm off. I'm gone. So I understand it on that level, but at the same time, I understand that I'm at this with a Western sensibility, and that's not going to hold true when you hear Japanese or Asian music in a vocal style, because their vocal style is utterly different.
Well, I'll give you one extra little bit of information that goes behind Siren that I think will make you just as interested in seeing their music video as anyone ever could be, which is the story of how Siren got together, which is that all 4 members are actually models, and they were working at a modeling agency, and via various routes got together with each other and decided to form a band. So it is a band completely made up of Japanese models.
Winner.
Damn right. It's a strange little bonus point that I didn't expect when I first got into this band. I wasn't expecting them to actually turn out to be 4 models, but that's what they are.
But that's all a feature of a lot of Japanese pop music.
Yeah.
A lot of it is image. The image is almost everything, even in certain cases.
Yeah, it can be. It certainly can be. But I think it's interesting, again, to see, like we said about Scandal, I think that Silent Siren are one of those full package bands where they actually managed to deliver a quality alongside just generally looking like the real deal.
I mean, that's the thing that got me. The quality of this is just astounding. Astounding.
It is really brilliant.
They got a real production sensibility about it that just blows me away. In other words, I always kind of go by the music, the lyrics, and the overall production. And if all 3 of those are in sync, then you've got a winner no matter what anybody thinks about it, no matter how popular it becomes. Because people will listen to tracks like that long after everything else is turned to dust,
I agree.
because of the quality, many artists, many musicians become famous long after they've made, whatever contribution that they've made. That's just the way of an artist. Everybody thinks, I'll become famous in my own lifetime. Wanna bet?
Discovered in retrospect is truly the worst curse.
Yeah.
Well,
anyway, this band in particular, to me, have extreme potential. They could do really, really well if they would make their music slightly more accessible to a Western ear.
Well, the interesting thing is that they're currently promoting a new album, which has been put off due to obviously all the situations in the world at the moment. The interesting thing is they've dropped a few singles from it, and one of the singles that I really loved was it was so incredibly Japanese that it would alienate a Western ear at a drop. And then they had another single that they dropped recently, which actually was more rock, and you'd expect it to appeal to a Western audience more. But ironically, I felt that they struggled with that. I felt that it didn't sound so much like they were comfortable. It was good, but it sounded like they weren't really getting the most out of themselves. So, if anything, this is a band who I don't think they'll ever get massive international success, because I think where they really work is just at being genuinely themselves. And what they do is it's a niche, and they do it really well. I mean, they really nail it.
All right. So just as a little aside for a minute, because I don't get this.
Yeah.
What the fuck is it with BTS?
All right, I'm gonna give my opinion on this, because that's a really fantastic point. Now, actually, I think comparing BTS to Silent Siren is actually a very dangerously accurate way of doing this. BTS effectively, I mean, for a start, you look at Silent Siren, they are incredibly attractive women. I mean, that cannot be denied. When you see them, you will, I'm sure, agree. All 4 of them, absolutely stunning. You have BTS. I'm pretty sure that if you're a woman, all of those guys, absolutely stunning. So, what happens that's different? Well, first and foremost is, I mean, don't get me wrong, Silent Siren, they have their writers, they have their producers, they have plenty of people on board, but they are musicians, so they're involved in aspects of this. They're involved in creating their songs to their own degree, and they're playing their own songs. Whereas BTS, they dance and they sing.
Yeah. So in other words, it's the difference between a real band and that.
Well, the question is what extra things spiral out from that? And now this is where we get into a slightly theoretical degree, because I'm sure that not every band meets these exact criteria. But if you were to look at a band who produces their own songs like Silent Siren, they're going to be less willing to produce a common denominator song. They're not going to be so happy kicking out something that is your four on the floor, basic, catchy beat, don't do anything complicated. Everyone sings one line or two lines just so that they get a mug shot in the video. That, you know, Silent Siren are not going to be willing to do that because they're going to want to produce songs. Whereas BTS, they're just going to be like, give me the song. Oh, is this going to sell? Good, I'll do it. Now, I have been told that BTS are involved in writing their songs as well. But as far as I'm concerned, this is the big thing. It doesn't show. It does not show.
And that's the reason that I'm kind of talking about it in the first place. Because I listen to these tracks and, you know, I understand them. I listen to BTS and I think, what the fuck? You know, what are you people doing? You know, are you entertainers? Is that the story? Are you from the kind of crooner side of things? You know, what exactly are you? Because, you know, I don't see a whole lot of intellectual musical thought going on.
They are basically pretty faces. They're pretty faces, and with the excuse of we have enough involvement in our songs to be regarded as creative geniuses. But in actuality, it doesn't come. I mean, like I say, I have heard that there was one member who apparently is like supposed to be like the one that everyone loves, and he's written some of their biggest singles. Well, if you play most BTS songs to me, I don't hear a written song. I hear a very rudimentary song that has been produced into existence.
Yes, exactly.
The production is the song. There is no actual writing of any real massive nuance. It's just produced with all the right sounds.
Well, certainly no kind of surprises, no. And because I was interested in why they were so popular, I listened to a lot of their stuff, and you know, it's very generic.
Very, but that's why it sells. Common denominator. It won't. It's, you know, if you put a pretty face on something that doesn't offend anyone, then they'll buy it just because there's a pretty face on it. If you put a pretty face on something that challenges them, then the pretty face will only get you so far. You know.
That's one of the things that bugs me about rap music right now.
Oh, it's gone downhill massively.
Here's a music that started as protest, which is the best place to start from.
Yeah.
And just became stronger and stronger until, once again, the music business had its way, and they sold the farm.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at, I mean, admittedly, of last few years, it got really bad. It has recovered a little bit, because I think it got so bad that it had to bounce back. But,
yeah,
I mean, you know, the Takeshi 6ix9ine thing was appalling. This tattooed-faced, rainbow-haired pedophile who was basically, I mean, that was disturbing beyond all belief.
Well, I find a lot of it disturbing, because it's very sexist. It's incredibly homophobic sometimes, even though they're representing inclusion. There's a lot of mixed messaging going on in that whole rap thing, you know, a lot.
Well,
and then there's the stuff that's drowning in shit, stuff that just isn't worth a candle, you know.
There's a lot of that, unfortunately, and a lot of that comes up from the idea of, well, dare I say it, like when you listen to these rappers. Like you say, there's the whole thing about defending your identity, but it's become so stereotypical. I mean, you go back, I mean, if we go back to something like NWA, they were defending their identity, and yes, they were homophobic, they were sexist, but it was 1989, and in all fairness, if you take a group of teenagers from 1989, it's hard to sort of hold them up to the standards of now 30 odd years later. A lot has changed. ultimately they were just they were being themselves in their own world and standing up against the things that were offensive to them. But when you've got someone in 2020 who's walking around talking solely about fashion brands and all the things they have, and is making no contribution to anything, but there is some good rap, but as a general, a lot of it's just turned to waste.
And so again, the thing that interests me is, do you see that there are in fact two different types of Asian music? That there's that whole kind of westernized, sell the music, pile them high, sell them cheap, and this entrepreneurial spirit that motivates people to make the kind of music that they do, even if nobody likes them. My problem is that I grew up in a time when music was everything, and I mean everything.
Yeah.
It was the air that you breathed. It was the food that you ate. It was everything,
and it meant change.
And that's why the music of that particular period is so strong even today.
Yes.
Even today, it's doing the job that it started off doing, which is changing people's minds. And one of the things that I'm always on the lookout for is that particular kind of music. Because to me, it's the only music that makes any real sense in a real world situation. Yes, we all love music because it makes us feel good. But then there's music that challenges you. Music that makes you question your own sanity, you know.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff that I feel particularly strongly about, which is why I think, like you, I have this kind of leaning towards Asian music.
I think I mean, I have a leaning, as I assume we both do, I have a leaning away from anything that in any way makes me feel like someone's trying to do what I've heard before. I don't want to hear a band who said, "Oh, I grew up listening to Nirvana and Nirvana are my inspiration." I want to hear a band who grew up saying, "Oh, I grew up listening to Nirvana, they inspired me, so now I want to do something that sounds nothing like Nirvana." That's what I want to hear. I was like, I want to hear someone who is more interested in the fact that Nirvana did something different than what Nirvana did. And that's the problem, is that people don't get that. You hear so many, pretty much every band, they tell you about what group they want to emulate. It's like, no, I want to hear you emulate their spirit, not their sound. I want to hear you emulate their interest in innovation rather than their number one hit singles.
Well, the point that I was making about growing up in the time that I grew up, and the importance of music in my life, was because that's something that we've most definitely lost completely. That kind of experimentation is definitely frowned upon these days.
I'm going to take...
And in fact, the only way that you can do it is by being a so-called bedroom musician. In other words, you just got to understand that you might be making music that's inaccessible to everybody.
Yeah.
So the question is do you still do it, or do you give in to, the market? And I think that defines the music that you make.
Do you think that maybe it's not so possible to be groundbreaking anymore? Do you think that the ground's been broken to the point where there's not enough left to really make an impact?
Well, that's really, again, the point that I'm making is that I come from a different era. And I wonder what it must be like to discover music in this day and age.
Yeah.
In other words, if I was 16, 17, 18, what would I be listening to? And a lot of that is dictated by the pressure from the media. You must like this, otherwise you're not cool. or you must like this, even though nobody else does, which makes you cool. In other words, it's all about, well, how cool am I? It's not about expanding your mind and just trying to think outside the particular box that you were born in. And that is what inspired a lot of people back in the day. You know, that we were hearing music that challenged you, that made you think, why, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? All those kinds of things, you know. And I've always been impressed by people who just say, well, fuck off, I'm just making music for me. That resonates with me because, shit, man, that's pretty much the story of my life.
But it's the only way to produce any music of any value, in my opinion. I don't see how you can produce music of value unless you are basically saying, get out my face, I'm doing this for me. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be country, it could be classical, it could be EDM, it could be metal. I don't care. If you're not telling people to get out your face and let you do you, then I can't see how you can produce something of value.
Yeah. One of the bands that really impressed me around the punk period were not actually punks at all. They were so experimental, so out there, that there wasn't really a name for them. This was a band called Throbbing Gristle.
I don't know this one. I'm going to have to look this up.
Very, very, very niche market. But they were also one of the first really basic electronic groups.
Okay.
And they got popular at the same time as punk. So where punk was cleaning up, this band, Throbbing Gristle, they were kind of forerunners of the whole Manchester doom and gloom scene, you know. To really be happy, you have to be as miserable as fuck.
Are you insinuating that Oasis might have in some way been caused by them?
No. I think Oasis were caused by wanting to be the Beatles, way after the Beatles.
They're caused by a lack of imagination, yeah.
I always viewed, I think they're a good band, okay, don't get me wrong. But I've always viewed them as being kind of second-raters. Because they're basically copying.
Oh, Oasis?
Yeah.
I don't rate them at all. I think they're complete trash, if I'm honest with you.
Well, the thing that actually sold them more than anything else was that attitude.
Yeah.
This kind of, well, fuck you, I don't really care. You know, which is very rock and roll.
But I would have appreciated that if it had been fuck you, I don't care because I'm all about rock and roll music. But actually what it was is fuck you, I don't care because I'm all about rock and roll attitude. It's like they were more interested in being rock and roll than making rock and roll.
And in the meantime, of course, they became stupidly wealthy.
Well, yeah, that doesn't help either, does it?
So, you know, I mean, that kind of, you know, defeats the whole object of the exercise because if you're serious, then, you know, wealth doesn't play a part, you know, neither does fame. No. The only thing that plays a part is how you feel about the music that you make.
Yes.
Which is why I've always soldiered on. Even though I know that probably nobody's listening, which is why I have respect for people like Patrick Lew, you know, because, you know, he just carries on no matter what, you know, he doesn't care, you know, it's not important.
No, it just never gives
what's
up.
important is what he's doing, you know.
Exactly. I think that's very true. I'm going to move on because we were going through the songs. I'll move on to the fourth song then, just to keep that flying. So the fourth song, you mentioned this is the only one that had Japanese instruments in it. Now, This is a group called Wagaki Band, and basically They are, I mean, they're really interesting because they do have the genuine Japanese musical instrumentalists in their group. I mean, they've got like a koto player, shamisen player, just basically all the people who play the traditional Japanese instruments are there, along with the rock band members. So they're a fairly sizable group. I think they've got 7 or 8 members. I personally, I adore the lead singer's voice. I think she's got an absolutely beautiful voice. And they seem to be, I mean, they look very young. They have a lot of style, but I think they're actually, most of the members are older than they appear. I think they're probably in their mid-30s or something by now, most of them. Someone will have to correct me if I'm wrong. So they're not exactly like the Spring Chicken 20s band or teenage band, but I think they keep a very youthful sound, very creative, and I think they're really good at balancing the sounds. They've got so much happening in any one song. They're very good at balancing them all out and delivering a final product which really allows everything to come to the forefront in its own particular time and place.
Well, it makes the track makes me want to go and hear something else from them, which is always a good start.
Well, they definitely do produce the goods. Usually in a similar style, but they have. I mean, they did one song which was kind of infused jazz. They did like a jazz version with Japanese instruments. Really amazing.
Whoa, that would be pretty good.
It was kind of like a swing jazz number.
I should check these guys out for sure. Yeah,
I'm going to give you links to all of this after the interview. Don't worry. So
this track out of all the tracks really ticked every one of my boxes. You know,
I can imagine that. I mean, this one I was really. A lot of these songs got voted to put forward to you. This was one that I personally really wanted to play to you just because I thought it was something that I felt would appeal to you. So this song was probably the one that I most personally put onto this list. Because I just kind of got the feeling that you would get something from this that you probably wouldn't be able to get from the other songs.
Well, knowing my own musical style, you would know that I'd love something like this.
Yeah, I knew it appealed to your personal biases, so I thought I had to give it a little go. So I went for the band's most popular single, which is this one, and popped that into the list.
So what's the band called again?
Wagaki Band. I'll give you a link. Don't worry.
Okay.
I'll make sure you got all of this afterwards.
Wagaki
Band. So let's move on to number 5. Now this is an interesting one. This is by a band, and tell me if you've heard of them before. This is by a band called BAND-MAID.
Yeah.
You've heard of BAND-MAID, okay.
I've seen a couple of videos.
Oh, okay. So you know what they look like as well.
Yeah.
You know the maid outfits.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. This is them.
Because I'm looking at the videos without any context. It's very Japanese.
I think so, yeah.
It is. It's very Japanese. It's exactly what I would expect to see in a Japanese video. There are a lot of images, Japanese images, that feature the same kind of style, I guess.
Themes, maybe. If we sort of paint the picture of this band, because this is a bit of a bizarre story. Now, obviously, you know the deal with maid cafes, which tend to be misconstrued, but in actuality, maid cafes are just a very innocent thing. The idea is it's just designed so that people can go somewhere and feel a little bit appreciated. It's kind of like the cafe version of someone giving you a free hug. It's just kind of a nice way of making you feel nice. There's nothing... people try to make this whole dark thing about them, but there's nothing dark about them. There's no underbelly. They're just kind of what they appear to be. Now, the rhythm guitarist, who's also the founding member, she was originally a maid in one of these cafes, and then she went on to decide that she wanted to form a band, and so she got members from other places, other projects. And she got very talented musicians and then convinced them all to wear maid outfits in various forms. The lead singer was the last member to join, and the lead singer didn't even know when she went for the whole thing that she was going to have to wear a maid outfit, and was quite shocked when she was told the news. So they're quite an interesting group in that they were formed in a very organic way. However, they went through a similar journey as our first band, Scandal, in that they started off getting signed up and playing songs that were given to them until it became kind of clear and apparent that they were able to write their own songs. And then they went on to do exactly that. And I must admit, their song quality actually went up after they started writing their own songs, which is quite rare. But they were writing better songs for themselves than the writers could write for them. I would personally say, although the founding member, the rhythm guitarist, she learned rhythm guitar to form the band. I would say overall, the quality of musicianship in this band is one of the highest, if not the highest, that I'm aware of currently active. They are unbelievably talented musicians.
They do seem to be. This is a very impressive track.
Yeah, I often cite the drummer, but the drummer doesn't do much in this song, to be honest. But I often cite the drummer is unbelievably good.
Well, I was a bit surprised to know who they are because, as I said, I've actually checked them out before. But I think that my thoughts at the time were kind of trapped in that whole MAID thing, because I know how prevalent that is in Japan.
It's hard to get over that.
It is. It's difficult, because when you look at some of the most popular images in Japan, it is very infantile. It's
kind of
it's
anime
like,
sort of things as well.
Exactly, yeah. And to be honest, I've never really seen the point in that,
No.
It's a very peculiar trait that only exists in Japan, or it only exists on the surface in Japan, and it's buried everywhere else.
I think that's more accurate. I mean, for example, the first band we listened to, Scandal, in the early part of their career, obviously through the choice of the management company, I'd imagine, their whole thing is they dressed in their school uniforms.
Yeah.
And that was shaken off after a few years, seemingly. But that was their thing. They always dressed in their school uniforms. And there is, like you say, there is a sort of a... I don't want to say fetishizing. There's some people who fetishize these things. But I think there is a certain degree of affection for that which is innocent, that which is childlike.
Yes.
And a lot of the time, although it's seen as being somewhat perverse, it is actually just a sort of genuine... because Japan's such a hard-working country with so many rules, I think it's a case of some people just like something innocent and a bit lacking in that sort of heaviness for their entertainment.
Yeah.
All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through, just give you a little answer to the questions that we mentioned. So we said, what band do you think is not playing their instruments? You thought it was probably band number 3. It was actually band number 2, BiSH. That's fair enough. And then we were saying, which band do you think has generated the largest following on the channel? Basically, you said number 5, which was BAND-MAID, which is therefore obviously true. You are right. Now, interesting one.
That doesn't surprise me. Again, it's fairly obvious when you watch a video, even though you don't understand it, that they have all the hallmarks of being, popular.
Yeah. Just that sort of, like you say, that layered, professional hard rock quality is right there.
They have a great group. They look good. And if you can get over the whole MAID thing, it works.
It's certainly working for them now, but I do think in the long term, maybe if they can get over the MAID outfits, it might give them an extra leg up, like in the foreign markets, but I don't know 100%. We have to wait and see, won't we?
No, I think that they'll probably do as well in foreign markets with the whole MAID thing as they do in their own country.
We're doing good at the moment, yeah.
But you're right. Sooner or later, it becomes a gimmick, and you have to ditch it if you want to be in any way different from what you were doing before.
Well, they did write it into their band name, so I think they'll just have to accept it as an image thing.
For the moment, for sure. But people get over that. They just start referring to them and stop thinking about the whole MAID thing.
Yeah, it just becomes a sound.
It's just a band name.
Yeah, just a noun, a sound, a name, something that you don't really think about. Okay, I'm gonna bring an interesting question to the last two questions. You said I asked you which one would you say is the most me, and you said number one, so Scandal. And then I asked you which one is the most you, and you said songs 3 and 4, which was Silent Siren and Wagaki Band. Ironically, I mean, Scandal is a band who, although I've known of them for a while, I don't know them particularly well. I've only heard a couple of albums, and I'm really making my journey through their material. If I was asked my personal favourites, I would probably be inclined to lean towards the same ones you said, 3 and 4. But, I mean, I like all of these bands, but I think at a push...
Yeah.
I would probably lean towards Silent Siren band number 3, just because of the fact that they have, I mean, their music is so listenable that there's virtually no mood you can be in where you can't listen to one of their songs. So
yes, I agree with that.
You can kind of hear that coming off of them, can't you? To be honest, I'll be honest with you, Steve. I think that you and I could talk for hours. So
know that.
I would be tempted, if you ever feel like doing another one of these sometime in the future, just for the sake of it. I think we should, just for that reason.
Yeah, it's enjoyable.
It's nice. We have what people at home don't know is we have our pre-interview conversation where we talk for about an hour each time, just about whatever's on our minds at the moment. Get out all of that stuff, and then we settle into some music conversation afterwards. So yeah, definitely. I think this is something we should pick up at another time and do more of. Definitely, but it's been a real pleasure.
Ask your listeners if they'd just like to hear us just talking, about anything, because we can do that. We've done that, ever since we first met. It's one of the things that I think both of us really is that we can talk for hours about everything.
I think we both value it very highly, and I do agree. It's just and we don't have to agree. That's one of the things I most like, is we don't actually have to agree on the answers to questions. We just discuss questions and we discuss viewpoints, and so I think it would make a great thing. Oh, your sound has gone. I can't believe it. That's insane. There it is.
All right, just to finish this off.
Yeah.
We were talking prior to doing the broadcast about the choice that people have in the world today, which is very distinctly black and white, not in a racial sense, but in a real sense of what choice do you make, when you're viewing the world and you're trying to make sense out of it, what choice do you make? I can't remember what the original point was, but that's my answer to it. Well, we all have choices about what we like and what we don't like, and the thing that makes it special is that you can, in fact, disagree sometimes quite vehemently about things, but you can still get to the ultimate truth of what you're both discussing. You might arrive at different conclusions, but that's the way of the world, right?
You can both disagree on whether you liked the roller coaster without disagreeing about whether you were on the roller coaster.
Absolutely, yeah. Or you can even discuss the very nature of roller coasters.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's one of the things. You can agree that you're on a roller coaster, whilst one of you says that a roller coaster is a completely fictitious design of quantum material. It's not really there, and the other one sees it from a literalistic perspective. I mean, this is the thing: is that conversation should always be about wanting to hear something that improves your perspective. You should go into a conversation wanting someone to improve you.
And the last few years, all I've done is watch these particular kinds of conversations.
Yeah.
Because it's what interests me in particular. You know, when you have a conversation that's completely free-ranging, and then you look at your watch and you think, Jesus Christ, it's been an hour and a half, or 2 hours, and it seems like minutes, you know, because of the nature of the conversation. So again, if you're want to hear these kinds of conversations where you're talking about literally everything under the sun, yeah, I'd be well into that.
I think we're slowly moving in that direction. These interviews have been quite fun. I think people have been enjoying the general discussion. So I'm probably going to aim towards more of that maybe in the future, but I'll get a bit of feedback on it anyway. I mean, what I wanted to say for this one, though, is that, like I say, we could talk about anything, and I'm pretty sure that we will, and I look forward to doing that. But certainly on this side, it was really great hearing your opinions, really great listening to a bit of what you had to say about these songs, and yeah, sort of having a bit of fun with that. But it's going to be great just to follow up on whatever we want to talk to next, and maybe just next time we just have a phone call for the sake of it. I can tell you and pop a recording on it.
All right. Okay.
All right. Well,
well, it's been enjoyable for me too, so you know, it goes both ways.
I'm sure it won't be the last time. So I'm going to say a little goodbye to the audience.
And I heard some music that I wouldn't have heard before. Goodbye, audience. You've been really quiet.
Yes, indeed. I'm going to send...
And I really miss not hearing all the applause.
I'm sure there was plenty of applause. I'm sure no boos, all applause. So I'm gonna now go and have a little chat with Steve and sort him out with some videos. So thank you so much for joining us, as always, here in Japan. You know how this works. If you want to like and subscribe, you can do all the usual things. And the links in the description below will give you all our social media, our Facebook, Twitter, Discord, Reddit, everything you can imagine. Massive thank you to our Patreon supporters for putting money in my pocket enough that I can actually keep on doing this. And a big thank you to you yourself for making it all the way through to the end of this video. Unless you're like one of those people who buys a book and then immediately reads the last page, in which case you've cheated. Otherwise...
No, I'm a Duracell bunny, mate.
This conversation could go in a very weird direction now.
No stopping me, okay?
So for you,
I enjoyed this immensely, and take care of yourself, okay? Stay well out there.
Will do. Everyone, stay well, and for now, ciao, ciao.